Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Seagraves. Welcome to News Plus. As always, we really appreciate you starting your Sunday with us. On today's show, we're going to take a look at the local music scene through the lens of Chip Pye. And then we're going to take a look at the Oscars through the ear of an Oscar winner, Russell Williams II. He's the first African American to win more than one Academy Award. It's all on News Plus, and it all starts right now. Seagraves. Up first this morning, Chip Pye. He's a local photographer who's been chronicling the local music scene for years. We had a chance to talk with him about his still photography and about a new venture that he's got going called Locally Grown. You've taken pictures mostly at live events, right? Live venues?
Right, most live events. I've always been a live music fan. I used to book bands into the gym at North Bethesda Junior High School in the 70s. I've been a photographer ever since I was 13 years old. In college, I combined the two and started shooting a lot of live music.
And so, who were some of the first bands you started getting into photography?
The first band I ever saw playing live was in Greenville, North Carolina, and it was the Pat Travers Band. But when I moved up here to D.C. about 30 years ago, I started shooting a lot of Mark Noon's bands, mainly the Slicky Boys, right. The Rhodes Tavern Troubadours. Just this past weekend, I went and shot the Hula Monsters playing out at the Bowie Grill.
And so, why did you decide that you wanted to start taking still photographs of the local bands that you were going to check out?
Well, being a live music fan and then having this eye and need to take pictures and there is a challenge of shooting live music. Oftentimes local music is poorly lit, small what used to be smoky bars, and it's more of a challenge to do it. And while I'm there listening to the music, I kind of like to get the feel of the music through my photos. And that's kind of what I think I bring to it. I also like to feel like, I don't know where I heard this, but DC's music scene is often compared to as vibrant as New Orleans. And a lot of people don't realize that DC is a music town. Bobby Parker is from DC. Bobby Parker took the link from blues to rock and roll music. It was a critical link. It got a lot of things started. Go-go was started here in DC. So I like to think of myself as a photo documentarian, if that's a word.
It is now.
Where it is now, yes. Where I really like to capture what's going on in D.C. because sometimes I feel like what I do right now isn't important, but someday in the future it might be.
And so we see up top here this great picture of Chuck Brown, and for anybody who spent any time in D.C., as you said, D.C. is a music town, and one of the great sounds, go-go, obviously is a unique D.C. sound. And you ended up doing a lot of work in the go-go community and really spending some very close time with Chuck Brown, didn't you?
Yeah, I photographed. I was one of 3 photographers who had the opportunity to photograph the last year of the godfather of go-go's life. But let me tell you how I got into that, because at one point after shooting all of these rock and roll bands, I started asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I documenting this? What do I want to achieve by doing this? And I thought that I would really wanted to have the collection of what the DC music scene is. And in DC is where the go-go music was born, moved out a little bit, but stays and resides here in DC. And like most white people, white rock and roll fans, I had no idea what that was, but I heard that Chuck Brown was the creator of that. And what ended up happening was I ended up setting myself on an adventure as I decided to explore go-go. And, there's 4 white people that ever go to go-go's here in D.C. And I took my camera and started going to go. Chuck Brown, originally his manager wouldn't pay any attention to me because my credibility with the Slicky Boys and with other local bands didn't transfer into their community. So I started shooting some of the smaller go-go bands. Chuck's band members all have bands themselves.
Right.
And I got my work known within a short period of time, and pretty soon I got the call from Chuck, and I began photographing the last year of his life. I don't have an internet site. The internet is not really good to photographers as far as copyright is concerned. Most of them live on computer hard drives in my archive.
And so where are people able to see your work other than what we're going to show here this morning?
Events like this, several times a year I lecture around DC. And I talk about my experiences in go-go, and I have a photo slideshow. One of my photos is in the Chuck Brown Park, and it was actually blown up to 14 by 9 feet, baked onto tiles, and assembled as a mosaic. There's 9 of those photos. One of them is mine, one of them is John Shore's, and they wrap around the Chuck Brown Park.
And so, outside of Go-Go, you've been chronicling a lot of the other bands. You know, we've had the Nighthawks here, and you know that's one of the bands that you've done shots. What's it like? You talked a little bit about the poor lighting in a lot of these venues, but what's it like at a place like Hank Deedle's out in Rye? You know, a true roadhouse. Trying to photograph bands. I actually remember one time seeing you there shooting from outside on the porch, I think, through the window in to get kind of the backside of the band.
Well, Hank Deedle's, yes, it's a roadhouse. And the light in Hank Deedle's comes from the light that sits over the pool table, which goes down, which is away from the band. The light from the pinball machines that comes across the room. And then the light from the Miller Lite signs. That's it. So one of the things that I feel like I've accomplished is shooting good pictures in bad lighting situations. You have to understand where the light is, position yourself, and to get yourself in position. And you also have to watch, because when you find out where the sweet spot is with light from, you know, a pinball machine, you have to put yourself in the position, watch the musicians to see when they step into that sweet spot to grab that photo.
And so, my last question in this segment, let me ask you about what you have learned or noticed over your 15 years of you know, chronicling all of these bands in our area. What have you learned about the music scene in DC and the health of the music scene and how we support local artists?
Well, that varies from genre to genre. You know, one of the challenges that Go-Go has is we don't have venues in D.C. where somebody from out of town who've heard of Go-Go, like in New Orleans. You go to New Orleans and you want to hear some New Orleans jazz, you get off the airport and there's a lot of people who will tell you where that is. Go-Go remains an underground scene here. You can't get off the airport and just say to a concierge, where can I go see Go-Go? Go-Go is played in spots that are continuously on the move. Governments in Prince George's County always are continuously trying to shut these down. We don't welcome that culture. We don't have a place for it. And that's a shame. That's a challenge that Go-Go is going to have to either step up to or perish.
Well, speaking of places people can play, when we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on in Chip's backyard that is really changing the way a lot of people in our area are appreciating local music. That on NewsPlus when we come back. Welcome back to NewsPlus, everyone. I'm Mark Seagraves. We're joined by Chip Pye. In the first segment, we were talking about the still camera, the photographs you've been taking for more than 15 years of local musicians here in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. But more recently, you have turned your attention, at least in the summertime, to your backyard and to a blog that you've called that's called Locally Grown. And this is something that people can go online and see anytime they want, absolutely for free. And I got to tell you, it's truly amazing on so many levels, Chip, because not only are you have a live music show in your backyard with interviews and performances, which is enough to be respected, but as somebody who books a local show, the talent that you're able to book and assemble in your backyard is also just epic. I mean, I know the hurdles of herding mice, as it were, and musicians. So let's talk about Locally Grown. This is you invite musicians into your backyard. Apparently you barbecue, but I don't know that we actually ever see the barbecuing.
You never see the barbecue.
But then...
But there is barbecue.
And is that before the performance?
Yeah, well, it's after sound check.
Okay. And then they perform in your backyard, And these are beautiful performances by some local artists. You know, you had Mark Noon. We were talking about him earlier from the Slicky Boys there. And he played some songs. But what was unique about that show that I thought was so special was that rather than, and typically you come out and interview.
Yes.
But you didn't on that one. You brought in someone else to do the interview.
Mark and I brought in Robbie White. Robbie White was the president of the Slicky Boys fan club back in the day.
In the 70s.
In the 70s and 80s,
right.
Yes. And, you know, yes, it was obvious that I should not do that interview because Robbie knew the better questions to ask. As a matter of fact, Robbie wasn't feeling well that week. We actually filmed that in his yard.
And I've noticed there are a couple different backgrounds we have seen, right? And while I haven't seen every episode, I have been binge watching because it's definitely bingeable.
Hold on one second. It's locallygrowndc.com.
And that's where you can go watch it. And there's a list of how many episodes are there?
I've done 19 episodes over 2 summers.
And these are great performances by just terrific local bands. And then we get to know them, but we also get to know a little bit about you. And I've noticed the props have kind of grown every now and then, and your microphone has grown.
My microphone has grown, yes. We have a lot.
Although it's not a real microphone.
Yes. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a game show host, and the game show I wanted to host was The Gong Show. When I set this show up, I originally wasn't going to be the host of the show, but the host didn't make it 4 times, so I jumped in front of the camera and became the host. And I needed to have a microphone in my hand because my hands were all over the place while I was filming. So we actually ordered a fake microphone, and it came in. It was this large. So my neighbor painted it all funky colors. But let me tell you how.
Let me ask you one question, because when you mention your neighbor, this is one of the things that I'm wondering about watching this. What are your neighbors thinking? I mean, I haven't been over there, but is it in Tacoma Park or
Silver Spring?
In Silver Spring, and so I'm guessing you have neighbors.
I have neighbors, and my neighbors actually love it. Most of the time we shoot Sunday afternoons, and so usually when I'm up in the morning on Sunday morning having coffee on my back deck, my neighbors from their backyards will check with me as to what time the music is because they get their lawns mowed and they arrange everything so that they can be on their decks while the music is performing.
And I never even thought about that challenge of shooting a show in your backyard when your neighbor might fire up the lawnmower.
Oh yes. As a matter of fact, one time that happened, and I went over and said, "You can't mow your lawn today. I'll mow it for you tomorrow."
Well, and people are watching, and they're talking about it. I was backstage at the Chuck Brown Band show the other night, and I was talking to Frank Sirius.
Okay.
He's someone who's been on.
He's been
on In Your Garden and has played. And I mentioned your name to him. I said, hey, I'm going to be having Chip on my show. And he said, funk up the grass. It was the first thing out of his mouth. And this show that you did, Funk Up the Grass, was truly a masterpiece. I mean, just a stroke of brilliance.
If I never do another show again, I will be glad that I did Funk Up the Grass.
And so for this episode, not only do we get the performance and interviews, but you do get the backstage or the behind-the-scenes flavor of these, as you said, these 4 world-class musicians from 2 different genres. So 8 musicians all together who had never worked before together.
Right.
And they come together in your backyard. And they funked up the grass.
They funked up the grass. And there's an interesting moment in the behind the scenes, which I actually knew was going to happen in the beginning, because the definition of funk, James Brown created funk when he took the beat and he put it on the ones. When you are funk, you start out on the ones. All right, I'm James Brown. The explanation is at the beginning of the sentence. All right, that's the core essence of funk. When these folks put together the first intro and started mashing it up, and this is on my site, there comes a moment where they try and put it all together, and the bluegrass musicians come in and the funk musicians come in on the ones, and it's like 7 people fell into each other and fell over. They stopped. Everybody looked at each other, and the bluegrass musician said, you came in on the ones, and the funk musician said, yes, we did. And they couldn't figure out how to do it, and Derry J pulled the bass player aside because there's no drum, and said, you have to change that beat by going bong, bong, bong. And they said, let's try it, and they backed up and started, counted off and started in, and there's a great moment there where Jeff King is playing the bass, and he knows that he has to change it to the ones, and he goes, when, and all the funk musicians go, now, and he pulls that beat out, and then everything came together, and that was a beautiful moment that happened in the Yard, because it was, not only was it musical cultures figuring out how to come together, it was people coming together around music.
You know, locally grown, I mean, it's unique. It's something that it's special. You should check it out, and it's free, and it's bingeable, and Chip, we really appreciate you coming in here and sharing it with us.
Thank you. That's locallygrowndc.com.